They were calling something, and it answered. Before we begin, if you enjoy these true horror stories, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a tale. Today, I'm bringing you 4 disturbing encounters with rituals that ordinary people witnessed in forests. My name is Mike, and I'm 31 years old. I work as a mechanic in Portland, Oregon. I'm not outdoorsy or anything special, I just like camping with my girlfriend a few times a year. In July 2019, we went camping in the Mount Hood National Forest. It was a Friday night. We had the weekend off and wanted to get away from the city. There are things that can't be explained. What I experienced that night changed everything. We got to the forest around 6 p.m., found a decent spot near a creek, set up our tent, made a small fire. All normal stuff. We cooked some hot dogs, had a couple beers, watched the sunset. Around 11 p.m., my girlfriend Sarah went to sleep. I stayed up a bit longer by the fire, just enjoying the quiet. Then I heard singing. At first, I thought maybe it was other campers with a radio or something. But when I really listened, it wasn't coming from a speaker. It was live voices, human voices, coming from deeper in the forest. I got up and walked toward the sound, not far, maybe 100 yards. Through the trees, I saw lights. Figured it was just other campers. I got closer, staying behind trees so I wouldn't bother them if they were doing something private. And then I saw what was really happening. There were like 8 people, all wearing regular clothes, jeans, hoodies, nothing weird, but they were standing in a perfect circle around this big tree stump, and on the stump was a pile of stuff. I moved closer to see better. It was personal items, lots of them. Jewelry, a watch, a wallet, car keys, a phone, and in the middle of the pile was a framed photo of a young woman, maybe 25 years old. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this with me. You're alone, hidden behind trees, watching 8 strangers standing in a circle around someone's belongings in the middle of a dark forest. It's nearly midnight. You're miles from anyone else. And then you realize what you're seeing isn't just some camping game. The people in the circle were chanting. It wasn't English, maybe Latin? The words were old-sounding, heavy, and as they chanted, they each stepped forward and added something to the pile. One person added a white ribbon, another added flowers, another poured what looked like water or maybe liquor over everything. After everyone added something, they held hands and the chanting got louder. One guy, probably in his 50s, stepped into the center. He was crying, like really crying, and tears streaming down his face. He picked up the framed photo and held it up. "Jessica," he said in English now, "we release you. We let you go. Be at peace." And everyone repeated, "Be at peace." Then the older guy pulled out a lighter, and he set fire to the pile. My first instinct was to run out, yell at them to stop. That's someone's stuff. But something made me stay hidden. And a part of me, a curious part, wanted to see what would happen. The fire burned quick, consuming the items. The plastic melted, and while it burned, all 8 people just stood there crying. Not screaming or anything, just silent tears while they watched everything burn. After about 5 minutes, the fire died down to embers. The older guy spoke again. "Thank you all for coming. Jessica would have appreciated this. She can rest now." People started hugging each other, wiping their eyes. They packed up their stuff and left in different directions through the forest. I stayed completely still behind my tree until I was sure everyone was gone. I went back to my tent, didn't wake up Sarah. What was I going to say? That I saw people burning someone's belongings in a ritual? She'd think I was high. Next morning, I told her. She was creeped out, but also kind of sad. "Maybe Jessica died," she said. "Maybe that was their way of saying goodbye." I Googled when we got back to Portland, found an obituary. Jessica Martinez, 24 years old, died in a car accident in June 2019. The funeral had been 3 weeks before our camping trip. I guess those people couldn't let go, so they made their own ceremony in the forest where Jessica used to camp with them. It's not illegal, it's just different, and it stayed with me. I still camp with Sarah, but I'm more aware now. The forest isn't just for recreation. For some people, it's a place to do things they can't do anywhere else. Sacred things, dark things, private things. But my experience isn't the only one I've heard about disturbing rituals. Recently, on a hiking forum, I read about Katie, a 29-year-old nurse from New Hampshire. What happened to her during a solo hike in the White Mountains in October 2020 made me realize these rituals aren't always about grief. Sometimes they're about something much darker. Katie likes hiking alone. She's been doing it for years. She knows the trails, carries proper gear, always tells someone where she's going. She's careful. But what she saw that day couldn't have been predicted by any safety protocol. There are things that can't be explained. What I experienced that night changed everything. It was a Sunday afternoon, around 3 p.m. Katie was coming down from Mount Washington on a less popular trail. She wanted to avoid the crowds. The trail was narrow, winding through dense forest. She'd been hiking for about an hour when she heard voices, multiple voices, whispering. She stopped, listening. The whispers were coming off the trail, maybe 30 feet into the woods. You'd feel your instincts kick in, your hand grip your hiking pole tighter, your eyes scan the trees looking for movement, and you'd debate call out to see if someone needs help or keep walking. Katie decided to investigate. She left the trail and moved carefully through the undergrowth toward the voices. She found them in a small clearing. 6 people, 4 men and 2 women, all wearing black clothes, all holding candles, and in the center of their circle was a dead deer. Katie froze. The deer looked fresh, recently killed. Blood still pooled around it, and these people were doing something to it. One of the men was carving symbols into the deer's hide with a knife, not butchering it, carving patterns, symbols. The people were chanting in unison. Katie couldn't understand the words. They sounded made up, or maybe from some ancient language she'd never heard. One of the women pulled out a small jar and opened it. She poured dark liquid over the symbols carved into the deer. The smell hit Katie immediately. Rotten, metallic, like old blood mixed with spoiled meat. Katie's hand moved to her phone. She should call 911, or at least take photos as evidence. But before she could do anything, one of the men looked up. He stared directly at where Katie was hiding behind a tree. "Someone's watching," he said in perfect English. All 6 heads turned toward her. Katie ran, didn't think, just ran, crashed through the forest, branches whipping her face, stumbling over roots. She could hear them behind her, shouting something, but she didn't stop to listen. She hit the main trail and kept running. Didn't stop until she reached the parking lot where her car was. Jumped in, locked the doors, and drove straight to the nearest ranger station. She reported what she'd seen: deer poaching, trespassing, illegal activity. The rangers took her seriously. They sent a team to investigate based on her description of the location. They found the clearing. They found evidence of a fire, but no deer, no blood, no symbols, nothing. The rangers told Katie that sometimes people hallucinate on long hikes. Dehydration, low blood sugar, fatigue. It happens more than you'd think, one ranger said. But Katie knows what she saw, and when she got home, she researched deer sacrifice rituals, occult practices in forests, found forums, blogs, Reddit threads. Turns out there are people who practice dark rituals involving animal sacrifice. They call it blood magic. They believe killing something and marking it with symbols can do things, give power, curse enemies, open doors to other realms. Katie doesn't hike alone anymore, and she definitely doesn't go off trail, because she learned that the forest has hidden spaces where people do things that shouldn't happen in civilized society, and sometimes you stumble upon those spaces when you're not looking for them. If you're enjoying this, leave a like and tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced something paranormal in the forest or anywhere else? I'd love to read your story. And speaking of things that happen in hidden spaces, I need to share what happened to the Johnsons, a family from Colorado. In August 2021, Tom and Linda Johnson, both 45, took their two kids, ages 12 and 14, on a camping trip to Rocky Mountain National Park. What they found during a late-night walk changed how they think about nature and what lives in it. The Johnsons are normal, middle-class family. Tom's an accountant, Linda teaches elementary school. Their kids, Emma and Jake, are into video games and sports. Nothing unusual about them. But that weekend in the Rockies showed them that unusual things find normal people all the time. There are things that can't be explained. What I experienced that night changed everything. They arrived Friday evening, set up camp in a designated area. Saturday, they hiked during the day, saw wildlife, took photos. Everything was great. Saturday night, after dinner, around 10 p.m., they decided to take a short walk to look at the stars away from their campfire. They walked down a trail about a quarter mile, found a clearing with a perfect view of the sky, laid out a blanket, and looked up at the stars. They'd been there maybe 15 minutes when Emma said, "Dad, there's people over there." Tom looked where she was pointing. Through the trees about 50 yards away, he could see lights, flashlights bobbing in the darkness. "Probably just other campers," Tom said. But Linda noticed something odd. Those lights aren't moving randomly. They're moving in a pattern, like they're dancing. The family got up and moved closer, curious, and what they saw made them instinctively gather together. There were at least 20 people, all ages, from teens to elderly. They were walking in a spiral pattern, each person holding a candle, and they were singing. Not like a church hymn, something stranger, higher pitched, almost like they were keening. In the center of the spiral was a tree, a huge old pine tree, and at the base of the tree people had left offerings, fruit, flowers, bread, coins, lots of coins glinting in the candlelight. "What are they doing?" whispered Jake. "I don't know," Tom whispered back. "Some kind of ceremony." One of the people in the spiral, a woman who looked about 70, broke from the pattern and approached the tree. She knelt and placed both hands on the trunk, and she started speaking, loud enough for the Johnsons to hear. "Great Spirit of the forest, we honor you. We bring offerings. We ask for protection for our families, for our homes, for our loved ones. Keep the darkness away. Keep us safe for another year." Everyone else chanted, "Keep us safe." Then one by one, people approached the tree and left something. A photo, a lock of hair, a small toy, a piece of jewelry. Each person whispered something to the tree that the Johnsons couldn't hear. After everyone had left their offerings, they reformed the spiral and walked around the tree 3 times, still singing that strange, high-pitched song. Then they stopped, stood in silence for a full minute, and dispersed, walking off into the forest in different directions, extinguishing their candles as they went. The Johnsons stayed hidden until everyone was gone. Then Tom said, "Let's go look." They approached the tree. The offerings were all there. Photos of people, flowers, food, toys. And carved into the bark of the tree were symbols. Old symbols, worn smooth by time and weather. This wasn't the first time people had done this here. This had been happening for years, maybe decades. "Should we take a photo?" Emma asked. "No," Linda said quickly. "This is sacred to them. We shouldn't disturb it." They walked back to their camp in silence, didn't talk about what they'd seen until the next morning while packing up. "Was that a cult?" Jake asked. "I don't think so," Tom said. "I think it was just people believing in something different, making offerings to nature like ancient people used to do." When they got home to Colorado Springs, Linda researched, found that nature worship and tree veneration are practiced by various groups in the U.S. Neo-pagans, Wiccans, nature spiritualists. Most are harmless people who feel disconnected from modern religion and want something more connected to the earth. The Johnsons went back to their normal lives, but sometimes they think about those people in the forest singing to that tree, and they wonder, In a world where so many people feel lost, who can say that their way of finding meaning is wrong? And to close out these unsettling accounts, I want to share what happened to Alex, a 26-year-old grad student from Seattle. In September 2022, Alex went on a solo backpacking trip in Olympic National Forest. What he discovered in the deep woods wasn't just a ritual. It was something that looked like it had been going on for a very, very long time. Alex is studying environmental science. He's rational, scientific-minded, doesn't believe in anything supernatural. Or he didn't until that trip into Olympic. There are things that can't be explained. What I experienced that night changed everything. Alex had planned a 3-day backpacking route through one of the less traveled areas of Olympic National Forest. Day 1 and 2 went fine. Beautiful scenery, peaceful solitude, exactly what he wanted.
On day 3, he took a wrong turn. He'd been following a trail that was supposed to loop back to the main path, but somehow he ended up in an area that wasn't on his map. The forest here was different. The trees were older, thicker. The canopy was so dense barely any sunlight reached the ground, and it was quiet. No bird sounds, no insects, just eerie silence. Alex was about to backtrack when he saw something that made him stop. A structure, made of branches and vines woven together into what looked like a dome. It was big, maybe 10 feet in diameter. He approached carefully. The structure was clearly man-made, but old. Moss covered it. Mushrooms grew from it. It had been here a while. Alex walked around it, looking for an entrance. Found one on the far side. A low opening, just big enough to crawl through. He knew he shouldn't. Every instinct said turn around, find your way back to the trail. But curiosity won. He took out his flashlight and crawled inside. The interior was hollow, and the ground was covered with things, bones, animal bones, arranged in patterns, circles within circles, and in the center of the bone patterns was a stone, flat and dark, stained with what looked like dried blood. On the walls of the dome, scratched into the wood and bark, were symbols, dozens of them. They looked primitive, like cave paintings, figures with antlers, trees with faces, animals with too many eyes. Alex felt sick. This wasn't just some kid's fort. This was a place where something dark had been practiced. For how long, he couldn't tell, but judging by the moss and decay, years at least. He started backing out of the dome, but as he did, he saw something that made his blood run cold. In the dirt near the entrance, fresh footprints, recent. Within the last day or two, someone else had been here recently. Alex scrambled out of the dome and looked around. The forest was still silent, but now that silence felt threatening, like something was watching him. He started walking fast, trying to find his way back to the trail. Every direction looked the same. The dense canopy made it impossible to get a bearing from the sun. After an hour of walking, getting more lost and more panicked, he heard something. Voices. Relief flooded through him. People meant he could ask for directions. But as he got closer to the voices, he slowed. Something was off. The voices were chanting. That same pattern of old words and strange rhythms he heard in stories, but never thought he'd hear in real life. Alex hid behind a massive tree and looked toward the sound. Through the undergrowth, he could see figures, 6 of them, in a clearing, all wearing dark clothes, hoods covering their faces. They were standing around something on the ground. Alex couldn't see what it was from his angle, but he could smell it, that iron smell of fresh blood. The chanting got faster. One of the hooded figures raised something, a knife, long and curved. They brought it down. Alex heard a sound, a wet sound, a final sound. He'd seen enough. He ran. Didn't care about noise, didn't care about direction, just ran. By some miracle, he found the main trail, ran along it until he reached the trailhead parking lot, got in his car, locked the doors, and drove. He didn't report what he'd seen. Who would believe him? He'd been lost, dehydrated, probably hallucinating. That's what they'd say. But Alex knows what he saw, and he knows that structure is still out there in those woods, still being used for whatever dark purposes those hooded figures have. If you made it this far, leave a comment telling me which story impacted you most. And if you know someone who enjoys these tales, share the video. See you in the next volume.